This is If You Can with me, Louis Alexander, where we learn lessons from those who have actually lived them. My guest today is Dr. Giles Davies, one of the country's leading cancer surgeons with over 3,500 surgeries to his name.
It's how you decompress from that, actually, that's the real art.
A man whose daily decisions change lives.
You could be asleep in bed at home and within 35 minutes be opening someone's abdomen.
We discuss humility, success, becoming a master in your craft, fear, and everything in between.
How do I maintain myself so that I can deliver cancer care to patients?
Welcome to If You Can. Dr. Giles Davies, welcome to If You Can. Incredibly honoured to have you here today.
Thank you.
When I first thought of the show, you were right at the top of the guest list I wanted, so thank you for being here. When you're in an operation room and you are in a life-saving operation, you've got someone in front of you and you've got potentially their family outside, and responsibility, pressure, stress is enormously high. How do you find the strength to deal with that pressure?
Yeah. So there's a point at which in surgery you get to tunnel in on the job in hand. And I think that comes up with the sort of preparation of scrubbing up, the rituals of surgery where you scrub up and you disinfect and you start to tune in a bit to what you're about to do. Even in the dead of night, when I used to do emergency general surgery, sometimes you could be asleep in bed at home and within 35 minutes be opening someone's abdomen to take out their ruptured spleen or clamp their aorta. And of course you think, oh, you'd be rubbing your eyes, sort of from sleep or something. You immediately tune in and start to mentally rehearse, if this happens, what would I do? If that happens, what would I do? And then the training and the repetition just sort of takes over. The difficulty comes, and I've been in this situation maybe 2 or 3 times, when this cascade of events keeps coming. So you clip this, it's still bleeding. Why is it still bleeding? I can't, and you start to lose that sense of control. And it can unfold very, very quickly in that situation. But of course, it's a bit like, I remember hearing people talking about kicking doors in Afghanistan, like, what are the chances of you being shot in the head as you burst through the door? What could happen that would change things immediately with an anaesthetist, with a team of 10 or 12 people overall in the theatre? Probably not too much, You could press on something, couldn't you, and wait and just gather your thoughts. And sometimes that would be something you'd do. You'd literally just press, take some breath. But I think it's afterwards, it's how you decompress from that, actually, that's the real art, not the pressure of the event itself. When you repeatedly do that, it's not very good for your mental health, I think, and that is, if you do that, so taking care of yourself, and a lot of my approach to my life now particularly has been around, how do I maintain myself mentally so that I can deliver cancer care to patients, women, young women sometimes, very young women sometimes, and sort of be an ordinary bloke, right? Outside of that, kind of have a laugh, share funny TikTok videos with my brothers, have a few beers with the lads, just lie in bed and do nothing or whatever, and then rock up, because on the day of any sort of operation, they're looking at me because it's the most important day of their life. Now, it could be just an average day for me, right? So I have to sort of switch from role to role sometimes. So dealing with pressure for me is about focus and about looking after myself a bit, to be honest, because if you're not physically capable, surgery is quite physically demanding, actually, because you're standing in one position for hours. If you've got a bad back and all that kind of stuff, sweating away and things, hydration and all of that kind of stuff, and just connecting with the job in hand in a very focused way. And it's a series of steps, right?
And those series of steps, do you develop that over time from your first operation? I'd love to see if you remember that moment. And what I can imagine is a little bit of fear, a bit of adrenaline, all the emotions in the world. Does that then develop and evolve until, say, your most recent operation?
You go through a sort of learning curve. Those things come from lived experience, don't they?
Absolutely.
and reflection. you know?
Well, the experience is so important, right? Because that's what gives us often our confidence when we actually say
Yeah.
we can do
Mm,
what I
mm,
intend to do
mm,
and
mm.
actually back up our words with action.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you must have had this many times where you've sort of the overall aim seems implausible, but when you've broken it down into its parts, like the components of an operation, and you've thought about like the purpose and the anchor for why you're doing something, you know, performance is a sum of motivation, ability, and opportunity, right? So if you're given training is quite difficult. So if I'm doing an operation, I said, look, I could do this flawlessly. I'm going to let Louis have a go at doing it for the first time on a patient, right? Hard to let someone else learn or train. Training is very difficult. Training in surgery is very difficult because at some point you've got to let someone else do something that you know you might be able to do a little bit better.
wow.
How do they learn, right? Simulators, a
And,
bit.
and that personal side of training, how much does doctor training actually prepare you as a person, technical things aside, how much does it actually prepare you as a person to step into that
there's
operation
certainly
theatre?
there's been a trend away from, I think not enough, right? I mean, I think it used to be we see one, do one, teach one kind of, and a bit in the deep end. And then it's gone a bit too far the other way, that we're obsessed with communication skills, training and scenario plan and simulations and role play. And actually, selection for medical school are based on high academic grades rather than human capabilities. And so people come and they're like rabbits in a headlight and they don't know how to talk to people or even look them in the eye or make someone feel at ease, and as a result of that, I kind of feel like it's going to be hard, because I think, oh God, these people are going to be looking after me, presumably, right? And so, you have a vested interest in making sure that maybe the people who will be operating on me might actually be humans, not robots, or not robotic humans, right? Without that connection. So I think we've lost that. But I think that goes across everything, doesn't it? I think
so.
people don't have the time anymore.
People are getting busier. That's for certain. People want to have more things to do. There's social media now. There's less quiet time, right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And on that topic
Yeah.
is the sense of how do you find the time?
Yeah.
Because I know you personally too, and you've got not just an incredibly successful career, but an incredibly successful personal life too. You're married. You said Shilpa is a GP in her own right.
Yeah.
You have 3 children, one of which is at Oxbridge, one has passed Oxbridge, and one's now training for serious triathlons. How do you go from being in an operating theatre and then come home and be a dad?
I think a lot of it is around having planning, but also just recognizing your limitations. Everyone at my age who is in my capacity as a consultant in surgery will say the same thing, that they went through a window of their lives where someone had to give. And I would challenge anyone who said that, oh no, I've always been a good family man. I was appalling. 30 to 38 was me time. And Shilpa consciously, we sat down and said, look, she said she was quite interested in orthopedics at one point, anesthetics. We said, and we had a baby, we thought, see, it's that self-awareness thing, that do you think we can both do this? And she said, look, no, I could do it. I could carry on anesthetics, but I reckon one of us is going to have to give. And if you're honest about that and say, look, and she said, look, you're already on a fast track. Maybe you got the best opportunity. And I always used to say this to junior doctors: never ever take positions on training programs, prestigious, at the expense of your family, because it'll catch up with you eventually, right? So that's planning is the first thing. The second thing is around do you genuinely get pleasure from? Now there are, sadly, a lot of people who just put their work, they'd be at work all day and all night, But actually, me going to Lanzarote for a training camp with Josh is nectar, right, compared to grinding away in the hospital. So for me, it's if I can facilitate that, everything I do is around essentially creating meaningful family experiences. I don't want stuff. I went through a tiny phase of wanting a Porsche, which I never had. My brother did. I got to an Audi TT at one point, and then I kind of like, and I drive a Toyota IQ. I don't want stuff, and I'm in our car park. I'm probably one of the few people. There's a guy with a McLaren 911s, white Arctic, white 911s, and Range Rovers and stuff. And then me, my Toyota IQ. It almost looks like there's a spare car parking space because it's such a tiny car. And I doesn't want it, but I do value being in nature and environments. I'm fascinated by the natural world. I've always watched nature documentaries. I've met David Attenborough 3 or 4 times. I will be mortified when he finally moves on. And there was somebody who had lived a life of purpose, right? And so to me, that's I would emulate a personal hero of mine, right?
Absolutely. Well, heroes is a big reason why I wanted to start this show, because I've been very lucky to have amazing mentors and role models in my own life. And is there a moment in your life that you've met someone or you've been in contact with someone who's had such a huge impact in your life?
Yeah, totally. I mean,
what's the
my
lesson?
anaesthetist probably, Dr. Ravalia. He won't tell me how old he is exactly. I think he's in his early 70s. And my old boss, whose job I took over, had been a consultant there for 26 years before I became a consultant at Kingston Hospital. And Ravs, as he's known, had been working with him for most of that time. So he was a senior anaesthetist. And he was the one who helped put the glove on and helped me. He is the most selfless man you could possibly meet, right? And, I feel like inadequate in many ways compared to his contribution to the world. And that was one of the reasons when I looked at doing this master's degree I did at Oxford, which is in global healthcare leadership, I felt it was kind of shaped by him. So, 4 days ago, he sent me a WhatsApp picture from Gaza, where he's currently helping people in Palestine. He goes to the Central African belt and operates and then does cases with no drugs. He just puts some of the drugs in a syringe bag and then squeezes it in with a glove and, cobbles together anaesthetic equipment. I remember him saying, I've got an issue at the moment. I said, what's that? He goes, well, the NHS pension, it's gold-plated NHS pension. He goes, my accountant's telling me I've got to spend some of the lump sum. I've just got to, take this lump sum of money and spend it. It just doesn't want anything, right? Doesn't need anything. He's embedded in his community in New Malden, and his wife is a pillar of that community. And he's looked after his children, and he just doesn't need anything. And lives simply. And yet, he's the happiest guy you can meet, right? Cheerful. He's funny. He'll swear, a bit of a laugh, all of those sort of things rolled into one. I suspect he's quite a religious man behind the scenes, but he's and we have just a connection that's formed through. And as a mentor, we would tease some of the trainees, particularly, they're nervous, aren't they, when they're particularly the specialist trainees, when they should be able to operate by now, so they're a bit anxious about their performance, And some of them we would say, look, we run a club, if they would say, look, are you married? And they go, no. We go, oh, look, well, actually, Ravs and I, we do a matchmaking service. So we can help you with, finding a wife, if you like, And because my wife's Indian, and the trainees used to know that, I said, look, my wife's Indian, and, we actually have a second wives club as well. So if you've already got a wife, we can source you another wife, if you need a second wife. And they'd look at you thinking, are they serious, right? Is this serious? Like the wrong. So that atmosphere of when things were serious, Ravs and I would just gel into a machine-like unit.
Is that the greatest lesson you learned from him? Yeah. That power of a little bit of lightheartedness in such a serious workplace, the ability, a bit of a relief.
100%, yeah. It's the humanity and human connection. So we would, just being a good friend, right? And, if you're at work with people, all the time, and you're spending more time with them than you might be with your spouses at times, then if you're a grumpy, miserable sod in the middle of the night, which you could be, couldn't you, if you're called in, irritated, shouting at people, treating nurses like rubbish, just get this done, shouting, arrogance, confidence, arrogance. Where does that go?
What's your relationship with the balance between the two as someone who is a master at what they does and highly successful? You've just achieved that. You told me outside.
I could be very selfish and and if you spoke to my wife, she'd go, "Oh, it's just it's boring, right?" Giles is always good. She says, "I try and do things, and he does it in a minute." And he'll just work it out, and he's always better at all that kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, how annoying is that, right? What a frustrating partner to be with. But she understands that it's not serious. She was the first person who used to tell me, you've got to be careful about being selfish, right? Mm-hmm. And I used to be really quite paranoid about being self-centered, because it's quite easy to get a godlike complex in a surgical environment. Because ultimately, you can shout at people. You could ask for this and that, and you've got 20 people at your beck and call, right? And if you take that approach to life home, you're an asshole, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just, you're just not a nice person. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to learn to be humble, a humble servant, and to taking out the bins and rubbish at home as being as important as doing the cancer operation you're doing an hour and a half before. Because if I come in and go, and I used to say, look, I've got a big list tomorrow, I need to, all sort of all about me kind of stuff. It's like nobody cares, do you know what I mean?
I call it almost an invincibility mode. And I talk about it sometimes in my adventures where when I switch on and I remember swimming the Alcatraz a few years ago, and I got caught in a riptide, and my goggles got knocked off 3 times, and the kayaks, there was always support boats and kayaks, came up and they were trying to pull me out. And I said, no, I'm not getting out, because I saw I was 100 meters away from the finish. But I put my life in danger. But I said no to being essentially saved. I was very lucky to push through. Yeah. I touched the sand and I walked up, and I just had to apologize to the kayakers. But they were furious at me. But I felt invincible. But as humans, we are not invincible.
No.
So what is your advice to those out there who want to be both successful but humble?
I think you have to put yourself in positions of risk, because I think calculated risk taking is really healthy, particularly when you're young. And I don't mean about doing dangerous things. I mean about standing up and being counted at the risk of ridicule, right? Which is like, I'm going to run my first half marathon and tell everyone about it because I want to raise money for charity, and then doing it in 3 hours or whatever, and being proud of that if you're a bit overweight. Saying that you're going to do, putting yourself out there, right, into somewhere that's not your natural habitat. And I think that's really a really healthy thing to do all the time. I started doing some sketching and painting for a while. I kind of really like the idea of it, and I'm okay at it, but I know I'm never going to be fantastic, and I'm in awe of people who are really good at art. But I know actually in my later years, I will definitely be doing that, as a thing. It's one of the things I really enjoy. I've got a lovely sketching set of pencils. I do it. I take them when I'm on holiday. And I said to the shop, I'm going to do a portrait of you. And it looked like this witch had been possessed. And she was crying with laughter at it. But I thought, well, look, I've had a go, right? It's okay, to do that. So I think putting yourself out there and doing things that are difficult is good,
Having conversations like today with Dr. Giles Davies are a great honour for me. But the reality is this show would not be possible without the incredible team at Bob. Bob are a refillable body wash for men, which I truly believe in. They've sponsored me on my latest world record out in Australia when I ran 8 marathons through all 8 Australian capital cities in 6 days, 23 hours and 40 minutes. And now they are backing and supporting this show because they believe in it, and they believe in the values and the mission of what we want to provide for the audience. And likewise, I believe in them. It's an incredible product which smells great. It's great for the skin. It's cleaner for the environment too, removing plastics. And for me personally, it's easy to travel with. It's TSA approved, which makes hand luggage a breeze. Please do check them out in the link in the description. One of the greatest parts of success, which we all have to go through, is the ability to bounce back when things don't go right. Have you had a moment which you're comfortable talking about where maybe you have failed or faced rejection? And first of all, how you felt in that moment, but how you're able to push through and succeed in the long run.
Yeah, I remember, when I started a job at Kingston Hospital, I, as a consultant, part of me, my dad was saying, "Oh, I thought you'd be a teaching hospital consultant, right? Not." So I worked at Great Ormond Street, the Royal London. I'd done my research at the Royal Marsden, and I'd done a research degree at the Institute of Cancer Research, and presented my studies in Kyoto, in Palm Beach. So I was kind of in the Marsden sort of banner. And a job came up at the Marsden. And I thought, yeah, I'll take that. It's a good site. They'll obviously want me. I'm an established consultant. And I just casually prepared for the interview, assuming my track record would just walk me in. And I was walking around Kingston Town Centre, and I got a phone call from Martin Gore, who's the medical director. He sadly died actually about 3 or 4 years ago. And he said, "Look, Giles, I'm sorry, you haven't got the job." And the person they took, I thought, seriously, over me? And I realized actually, it took me a while to sort of take that as so I went back and said, I didn't get it, right? It was the first time I've ever applied for anything and not got it, right? As a thing. And I've passed all my A-levels, I've passed all this, and I've passed all that. And I thought to myself, okay, they don't want me. And yet I've done all my research here. Is it me? Maybe they don't like me. What is it? And I realized it was all about the sort of the organizational fit at that time. And they had a much longer time horizon. And there's probably lots of reasons. It was a female consultant they appointed. They wanted to blend the department properly so they got the right balance of people. She had a different type of research background, which probably fit in better to perhaps what they were thinking about might be the long-term research portfolio. They might have thought, well, he might come here and then he might go somewhere else, or maybe he'll just go private, or all of those types of things. And I think that was difficult. The other difficult thing I found was when Shilpa was ill. She was seriously ill for a while. In 2013, it was a completely reversible condition, but thankfully. That was another, what I call crucible moment, where you think, oh, if I carry on working as hard as I do, what the hell is this for if she's not well? So I remember leaving the NHS and everyone going, oh, you're just going to be a private plastic surgeon. Everyone just thinks you're going to be a private plastic surgeon. Mate. It's me driving around in a Ferrari doing boob jobs. And I felt like actually quite scared, first and foremost, and also like I just lost my identity, because my NHS patients were, you get these older patients where they dress up to go to the doctor. A gentleman wear a jacket, a tweed jacket and a tie. Yes, doctor, and it accompanied his wife, right? And they've been married for like 50 years, and she's got breast cancer, and he's deeply worried about her. And, I thought, they're not going to be coming to the private clinic in Harley Street, are they? Right? And I thought, that's it. They're gone. I'm not going to see those people again. And that really worried me. And so I had to really rethink the way in which what I really wanted to do and the way I wanted to practice medicine. I said to Shilpa, right, I'm leaving the NHS. She goes, how are we going to, pay the bills? And then I said, I'm also going to give up all aesthetic surgery. And she goes, you're mad. I mean, breast reductions, they pay quite well. Breast enlargements pay quite well, right? So how can you not do that? I'm thinking about becoming an examiner at St. George's. She goes, well, what's that? What good is that to anyone, right? And I thought, I need to retain my professional status, and I do the things that I really...
your values.
Stick to my values. And my values and beliefs that shape my actions. And so I played the very, very long game, which I think is the reason I'm in this sort of flow state where I can choose to focus on some projects and sometimes throttle back when I'm on the red line, but also then go in large. I did 7 operations on Monday over 13 hours of surgery. And I was totally up for it because I'd had a break and I kind of planned it and I love it, you know. But I know that if I had to do that day in, day out in the NHS, it would be unsustainable.
But you've been doing what you've been doing for almost 30 years. Where do you find that daily resilience to keep turning up for over 3,000 surgeries? Where does that resilience actually come from?
A family. Yeah, I think it is that there are some people who are wired like that, right? I'm not actually somebody who's got like some amazing Energizer Bunny energy actually at all. I need quite a lot of sleep. I would certainly want, you know, I wouldn't say I look at some people and I think they are incredibly energizing all the time. I'm not quite like that. But I just think about who's at home, right? And Shilpa. And like, if I can take her to this hotel we go to in Rye, in the middle of the week, when everyone else is at work, and I can choose to go on a rainy day, smash out a 10K along the beach, come in, have some oysters, sit in front of a fire with her, and spend the evening with her, when everyone else is at work, and I can choose to do that. It's not the hotel, it's the fact that I've got the choice to do it and I've created that shared meaning experience with her. And so for me to go and do something difficult the next day or hit the gym and do something difficult, it's about challenging myself to be the best version of myself for her, right? Simple as that.
It's a wonderful
She
motivation.
doesn't care about, you know, the splits of the Ironman, does she? She just cares that, or annoying her with all these bikes and bike boxes and lying about how much everything costs and all that kind of stuff. She doesn't care about what she cares about. What Sophia, my little one, cares about is being present and setting an example to them, you know?
Being a role model. Giles, I think you're incredible. I think what you've achieved, the incredible things, we haven't even touched on probably 10% of it today, but I really do think the audience can take something away from this. I want to finish with this.
Yeah.
Lots of people out there, as I said at the start, won't be going into the world of medicine.
No.
But what can we learn from someone, a cancer doctor, in surgery that we can apply to our own lives without ever having to step into the theatre?
I think, you know, I call it like diligent consistency, right? Don't fleet from one thing to the other or chase something that you're not good at. I used to say to trainees, you want to do neurosurgery? I remember this young female, because I was thinking about doing neurosurgery. I said, look, there were 12 female neurosurgeons in the United Kingdom, right? There's 130 consultants. That's it, right? It's tens of thousands of doctors, right? So you want to be a female neurosurgeon. Start doing neurosurgery. And if you like it, you think you're good at it, and you think, keep doing it. As soon as you feel like, I don't think I should be doing this, or it's not my thing, just do something else. But if you're going to do it, do it properly and do it diligently and consistency. There's a pleasure in routine, isn't there? And there's a pleasure in the unexpected adventure. So you have to have part of your working life, or most of your working life, in this consistent performance. And then part of some crazy stuff, right? Where you just hang out, do weird stuff, don't do anything, stare at the walls, like doom scroll on TikTok, whatever it might be. If you're such a nerd that you try and you haven't got a life outside of your work, you're probably going to come unstuck. If you don't give a monkeys and you think you can be an investment banker and just go boozing and snort cocaine till 3 a.m, I'm afraid you're not in 1990. You won't be able to do that either, because there's people who are got degrees in computer science who are walking in as data analysts. Yeah, so you have to step up, work hard, be diligent, consistency, but also just be normal. No one cares. You're not big. You're not clever. And I interviewed the CEO of Moderna, a guy called Stefan Bancel, and he's personally worth about $6 billion US. You know, he runs a huge company, the vaccine, right? Moderna vaccine, and he's the same age as me, and he said he goes heli skiing in Alaska and all this kind of stuff. But I actually, when I talked to him, I thought, look, mate, I'm not impressed by that, right? What impresses me is your organizational purpose and your personal story, why you do these things. But the heli skiing in Alaska, or the chauffeur-driven Mercedes picking up, it doesn't impress. And so I was very relaxed interviewing him because, what's so special about him, right? Nothing, right? Nothing special about me, nothing special about him. We're just normal people, really.
Well, it's a great place to finish. Success means nothing if you don't treat people well. And the challenge is as you become more successful and those things start to come, like nice cars or whatever it may be.
Your definition of success is not necessarily what everyone else's is, right? And success isn't necessarily the size of the medal. It's the journey, personal journey you've taken to get to it, isn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Dr. Giles Davies, thank you ever so
thanks,
much.
Luke.
It's a real pleasure
Enjoyed that.
to sit down with you, and thank you for all your
Thank you
support
for
over
having
the
me.
years.
Thank you for having me.
Hi everyone, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of If You Can, and thank you to the wonderful Giles Davies for coming on the show. Incredible person, incredible lessons, and just incredible stories too. Someone as well who's kindly supported me over the last couple of years behind the scenes too with my adventures. So thank you again, Giles, for coming on the show. But of course, it is now time for our Bob's Everyday Hero, our weekly segment to finish the show where we give a shout out and a thank you and a big well done to someone from the If You Can community who's achieved something great. It could be big, it could be small, it could be anything. You can nominate yourself, a friend, a family member, a colleague. You just have to send us an email at louis@ifyoucanhq.com. That's louis@ifyoucanhq.com to be nominated. And each week we'll pick someone out from the emails. And this week's Everyday Hero is Charlie, and I'm going to read his email to you now. Hi Louis, my name's Charlie, and I just wanted to share something small I did after watching Jordan's episode last week. I've spent ages talking myself out of going after something new because I didn't feel ready. And this week I finally booked a solo holiday after putting it off for months. It's with the Solo Travellers group, which is actually the most nerve-wracking part. Nothing's changed overnight, but it feels good to have something to look forward to. Jordan's episode gave me the nudge I needed, so please do pass on my thanks. Cheers, Charlie. Well, Charlie, I'm really happy and excited for you too. I'm sure Jordan is too. You're right. Sometimes there isn't that perfect moment, and sometimes the perfect moment is now. And it sounds like you've understood that and you've taken that leap. So well done. We're going to send you out a Bob Shout pack to take on your adventures, which I'm sure will be incredibly useful while you're out there. And we wish you all the very, very best. Something I've learned over the last few years on my expeditions and my travels and spending a lot of time on my own is actually there's some amazing people out there. There's a lot of kindness too. So you're going to experience that firsthand. And I'm sure you'll return home with many, many friends. So good luck, Charlie. And thank you again to everyone for listening to this week's episode of If You Can. We'll see you next week.